Elden Ring, but Cab VRV, you have not played Elden Ring on the channel? Well, this is true. But what you don't know is that Elden Ring is the FromSoft game that I have played the most of in my life. I have played it and beaten it multiple times. I got every ending and 100% of the game. That just all happened before I started the channel. So, similar to my Bloodborne playthrough, I know there's some DLC coming out soon-ish, possibly, so I thought this would be the time for me to do some Elden Ring lore reactions. I'm going to use a VaatiVidya video again and watch it through and see what I know and see what I don't. Here we go.
Our story doesn't begin in the lands between. It begins in the cosmos, far away, with an outer god called the Greater Will. There are a lot of outer gods mentioned in Elden Ring.
Very similar to Bloodborne.
You can think of these kind of like the great ones of Bloodborne. They're distant beings.
Yeah, see?
They're all powerful and they're quite unknowable by design. But many of these outer gods want to make their presence felt in the world. The Greater Will, maybe most of all. To this end, it sent a golden star hurtling towards the lands between. The Elden Star's incantation tells us that this golden star was bearing a beast, an Elden beast. The Elden Remembrance calls it a vassal beast of the...
Man, I'm not going to stop this too much. It's kind of a long video, but, I got shit to say. So when it's all kind of hitting me really hard right now, the similarities between Bloodborne and Elden Ring. Obviously, that just like happened right off the bat where I was like, oh, that's just like Bloodborne. But it really is. There's these gods. They're from the outside. There's the Greater Will. They're just doing stuff here on, I don't know if it's Earth, but you're right. Very, very similar storyline, which is weird because wasn't Elden Ring like kind of the only one not written by them?
The Greater Will.
Interesting.
If you didn't know, a vassal is someone who holds land on behalf of their overlord. Obviously, this is fitting in this case, because the Elden Beast occupied the lands between on behalf of the Greater Will, and was a living incarnation
of
the concept of order. As such, this beast would later become the Elden Ring.
I assumed the Elden
Ring
Beast
itself is made up of runes of power.
Created the
some
Greater
great,
Will.
Some small, that together represent a sort of logic for the world to follow. Thus, the Elden Ring represents order. The true nature of this order is a subject of constant debate and research undergone by fundamentalists. But two of the key fundamentals are the laws of causality and regression. You can think of the law of causality as cause and effect, where actions have consequences, and those consequences are new causes that branch out into infinity. These are the relationships between things. Then there's the law of regression that states that all things eternally yearn to converge and return to their roots. Fittingly, then, the Elden Ring is housed within the Erd Tree, which towers over the lands between. But it's very important to stress that life in the lands between did not begin with the Erd Tree, the Elden Ring, or the Elden Beast.
That's right.
No, the lands between were occupied well before the Greater Will came.
Lots of lore
there were other
about
beings.
dragons, right?
There were other factions here. There were other gods here. And there was even another great tree here before the Erd Tree.
No way. I didn't realize that.
And this is where a huge twist regarding the Erd Tree comes in. So, there are incantations in the game called aspects of the Crucible. According to their descriptions, these are manifestations of the Erd Tree's primal vital energies.
Interesting.
And I quote,
dragons.
They are an aspect of the primordial crucible where all life was once blended together. But how could all life be blended together in the Erd Tree?
So this is like the what's the word? It's a genesis, basically, right? The beginning of life in this planet, or we'll say the lands between. The beginning of life in the lands between came from the primordial tree. Interesting.
Blended together. But how could all life be blended together in the Erd Tree if the Erd Tree appeared after life existed? Well, there can only be one answer, right? That the Erd Tree is a parasite, and it took over a tree that existed here before. This
weird thing, though, I was just talking about this to someone I know. Don't all plants just kind of look like weird parasites? Like, think about this. If you didn't have trees in your life and you went to another planet and you saw these freaky ass things growing out of the ground everywhere, reaching for the sun and taking over, like, trees look insane. Weird take, I know, but I'm just saying they do.
Is a parasite, and it took over a tree that existed here before. This ancient tree was called the Great Tree. So the Great Tree was almost certainly the location of this primordial crucible, and it must have been a very powerful primordial force for the greater will.
Oh man, I didn't know
commandeered.
that was the
It
tree.
might even be the reason the Lands Between is important to the greater will in the first place. It also explains why spells and enemies related to the Great Tree's crucible would eventually be looked down upon. For example, the knot talisman is fashioned from a knotted vestige of the crucible, and it was considered a signifier of the divine in ancient times, but is now increasingly disdained as an impurity as civilization has advanced. Enemies related to the crucible are the Omen, the Misbegotten, and the Crucible Knights, and all three of them would be shunned, enslaved, or imprisoned. Those who speak for the Erd Tree don't want you to know its roots.
You know what's interesting? I'm not a very religious guy, but like when you look at stuff like this, and they're talking about like the old religion and the old gods, in this land, it's real, man. Like it's, there it is. You can see it. The magic happens. You watch it when you play the game. Then so I can almost understand in some way, like looking at a religion or an old religion, like you're probably not in modern times going to go like actually praise Thor, right? So that would be silly. And so people, but in this land, it's not. It's real. You're just like, I don't like your God who's real and we see it. I like my God who's real and we see it. So it's kind of weird to see them like sort of. You got to think about it a little differently. It's not like just some people who cling to old weird shit that you don't understand.
Or imprisoned. Those who speak for the Erd Tree don't want you to know its roots, so to speak. According to the spell, protection of the Erd Tree, in the beginning everything was in opposition to the Erd Tree, but through countless victories in war, it became the embodiment of order.
Yeah.
In Marika's own words, the Erd Tree governs all. The choice is thine. Become one with the order, or divest thyself of it. To wallow at the fringes, a powerless upstart.
But the Greater Will needed more than a big tree. It needed loyal agents in the Lands Between. To this end...
I'm just sitting here thinking like these trees are these fingers are always so gross looking. And she's just like, man, these things are disgusting as fuck in the caption at the bottom. I came across something recently on the internet that the hands, the 3 fingers and the 2 fingers, or 2 and 3, whichever, that's like what they are. It's one hand that is cut and they actually kind of fit together, like some theory. I don't know. Thought it was interesting.
It has the 2 fingers, who are its envoys. The 2 fingers heirloom has a weird picture of them, but it reads, of course, fingers cannot speak, yet these are eloquent. Persistently they wriggle, spelling out mysteries in the air. Thus did we gain the words of our faith. These words are interpreted by the finger readers. These are the undying old crones that you would have found throughout the Lands Between. They pass down the wisdom of the 2 fingers, or at least they used to.
Your fingers, please, your fingers.
Oh yeah, they like beg
I can
to do
read
it
them.
still.
Most of them appear to have lost their purpose, and they're desperate to read your fingers and tell you annoying riddles, since their 2 fingers are likely dead.
Oh yeah.
And yes, of course, there are multiple sets of 2 fingers. You would have found their corpses on the tops of the divine towers. Atop these towers,
And I
you
did.
loot the fingers in order to activate the true power of a great rune. Specifically though, you are giving benediction back to your great rune. You're taking a blessing back from the 2 dead fingers, essentially. This is just one of many blessings that the 2 fingers can bestow, and my point is kind of that the 2 fingers clearly have more than just influence.
Ronnie
They have
killing her 2
real
fingers.
power
Yep.
on some level. The Greater Will needs these powerful envoys
That
and
hair.
agents because, while it's obviously incredibly powerful, it
Real talk though, if you like really liked somebody, you went out on a first date and you just didn't like pay attention to their hands, but you really liked them, and then you saw their fingers and they look like this, would that be a no-go? I'm just curious. But they're awesome. You had a great time, but that's what their fingers look like. I don't know why I just said that, but that's the thought that was in my head.
Does seem limited by a few things. First is space. The Greater Will didn't come to the lands between itself, it sent an elden beast to do its bidding instead. Second is time. There is a moment later in the game where your pair of two fingers go still because they're forced to commune with the Greater Will for guidance.
When they are finished, the fingers will again offer their guidance. But thousands, if not tens of thousands, of moons must first pass.
That's a long
no
time.
Matter for
I remember
me.
when she said that when I was
But
playing the
you-
game.
How will you ever manage to wait?
Like
So the Greater
30,000
Will
years from
needs
now
a
or
physical
something.
manifestation of order. It needs envoys to convey its will, but what it also needs is a god. Introducing Marika the Eternal. I have this utterly enormous mind map of Elden Ring's lore,
Whoa.
and there's a reason she's at the center. She's essentially the equivalent of Gwyn from Dark Souls, except unlike Gwyn, Marika didn't just crawl out of the dark and find power. To an extent, it seems like she earned it. We don't know much about her origins, except that she is of the Numen race, which is actually an origin that you can choose in the character selection screen.
No shit.
Numen come from outside the lands between, and are supposed descendants of denizens of another world, long-lived but seldom born.
Wow.
At some point, Marika was chosen as an Empyrean. What is an Empyrean? Well, an Empyrean is a being chosen by the fingers as a candidate for godhood. As an Empyrean, Marika received the aid of a shadow to do her bidding. So what is a shadow? Well, it's a wolf, shadowbound to its Empyrean by the two fingers. Luna Princess Rani
It's
is
always a
another
wolf.
example of an Empyrean with
Huh.
a shadowbound beast.
Oh,
You would
yeah.
have met Blythe.
Yeah.
These creatures are the Empyrean's very own shadow. They are completely loyal to their needs and, by definition, incapable of treachery.
I don't know.
Marika's shadow.
With what they just said, a lot of that's not necessarily. I feel like that's not necessarily true with Blythe. It's a little shaky. It's kind of an interesting story. But I think I'm getting the point here so that the wolves, and I think I did pull some of this when I played the game. So the wolves, or the shadows, as he's calling them, are just like the guards of the Empyreans. So your boy here, whose name is currently escaping me, I'm sure it's about to be said, which was a really hard boss fight, by the way, is Marika's shadow. But she's like gone. Yeah, that's pretty tough. I don't know. Blythe, though, I think is probably a pretty standard example of it. Were there others in the game?
Was a beast called Malekith.
Malekith.
Every Empyrean uses their shadow in different ways, but Marika's sole need of her shadow was as a vessel to lock away destined death. So what is
So she
destined
can't
death?
die.
Well, according to Enya, it's the rune of death.
The rune of death goes by two names. The other is destined death.
We mentioned
yeah.
earlier that the Elden Ring is made up of runes, and at some point, maybe when she was chosen as a god, Marika plucked the rune of death from the Elden Ring. She gave the rune of death to Malekith, her totally loyal shadow, who bore a black blade imbued with this rune. It's kind of genius, really. In a single act, she removed the concept of death from the lands between, while also commanding total control of death through her shadow, who could deliver it.
That
as
is
her
the
will.
genius move. That's a real win.
Now,
He's right.
Some of you might be asking, if death is removed from the
Dog.
lands between, how come I can kill this dog? First off,
Good point.
shame on you. Second, from a lore point of view, that dog isn't really dead. It's simply in the process of its spirit, or its soul, returning to the Erd Tree.
Just like when we
Catacomb
die.
dungeons, for example, are specifically constructed near the roots
Wow.
of the Great Tree for this reason, so that the Erd Tree can reabsorb their ashes back into it. This process replaced the concept of a death that you were destined to have.
Oh man, that's really good. Okay. So what was just a mechanic in a FromSoft game, Demon Souls, Dark Souls 1, 2, 3, Bloodborne, Sekiro explains it, I guess. What was a mechanic, they've actually explained with some story here, And I probably missed something in Dark Souls. I never went as hard into the lore of those as I have other ones. But that's amazing. Like you die, but your spirit comes back, and then you're just searching for your body, your soul again, your souls. Again, you come back. So that's a really interesting way just to explain the mechanic.
But this process replaced the concept of a death that you were destined to have. But this random spirit outside of a catacomb dungeon says it best. As another example of this theory, when you kill a major boss, you receive a remembrance of them. These are spirits, and they are hewn into the Erd Tree. In this way, thanks to the Erd Tree's grace, their spirits are immortalized, in a sense. This new form of death also explains what's happening when you summon spirits.
From ash and return to the Erd Tree.
However, some spirits never return to the Erd Tree, and they rise within death as corpses or skeletons instead.
Wow, interesting. To refuse the Erd Tree's call to return to live with death.
And it's important to stress that it was in this moment, when the rune of death was removed, when destined death was taken, this is when order became the Golden Order.
The forbidden shadow plucked from the Golden Order upon its creation.
Specifically, this was Marika's Golden Order. So not only did she become a god and a vessel for the Elden Ring, she became renowned as Marika the Eternal for her removal of destined death.
Oh, okay. So it's not so much that she's eternal, it's that she made everybody eternal. So can we stop for a second and think back? What in the hell is the greater will? What's the goal here? Like, why would they even want to have everybody be eternally alive down in the lands between in the first place? Like, what's the point? Why is the Elden Beast even there, and why is that important? I'm not sure. And then there are a lot of people that they end up killing throughout this. I'm sure they'll get to, but there's like all the old gods and things like that. At least there's some choice too. That's the thing too. You don't really have to choose the Golden Order, it seems. That's interesting.
It was a huge part of her character and her reign as well. However, Marika had more than just death to conquer. She had wars to fight, as the world was occupied by many forces that could threaten her Golden Order. There was war with the Storm Lord, who likely ruled over Stormvale, and there was a war with the Giants, who were masters of a flame that could burn the Erd Tree. There was war with the ancient dragons, who incidentally had stones that could twist time and thus slay a god. And finally, there was war brewing with the Carrion royalty, who had previously obeyed laws which contravened the Golden Order. Thus, sort of similar to how the Greater Will needed an Empyrean to enforce its will, Marika herself needed someone to wage war. So there was to be a husband, a consort, an Elden Lord. The man chosen was Hoarah, a ferocious warrior who became known as the Lord of the Battlefield. His crown was warranted with strength, and while it was for this strength that Marika married him, he was also required to take a vow to conduct himself as a lord.
But he wasn't strong enough,
the
right?
ceaseless lust for battle that raged within. Hoarah took the beast regent Sarosh upon his back. You'll notice this is another example of a beast being given for the purpose of serving order.
Oh, like a wolf.
Thus, in this moment, he went from being Hoarah, warrior, to Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, consort to Queen Marika, and a certified demigod. Godfrey and Marika had 3 demigod children together. There was Godwyn the Golden, who you saw being killed in the opening trailer, and there were also the reviled Omen twins, Morgoth, who guards the Erd Tree, and Mohg, who became Lord of Blood.
That's a sad story.
You might think that Godric was another demigod child, but he actually wasn't. Instead, he was probably descended from Godwyn. Anyway, we'll talk about the demigods more in detail in another video, so subscribe for that.
Subscribe for that. There are actually like 7 videos describing Elden Ring. I noticed that's one thing that's really interesting about this guy's videos. When he has a FromSoft game, there's usually 1 or 2 videos, and then Elden Ring hits, and he's got like 10 or something like that. There's a lot. I don't know if I'm going to get all through them, but let me know if you think I should. But there's a lot.
But for now, just know that Godfrey and his offspring were the first demigods, henceforth known as the Golden Lineage. In his wars, Godfrey led his 16 Crucible Knights into battle, who were named so for
Only
they fought with
16?
the primordial powers of the Erd Tree. Their incantations were aspects of the Crucible itself, and they likely fought giants, dragons, the Stormlord, and more to usher in their age.
I thought that the Crucible Knights were of the old religion or whatever, the old tree, not the Erd tree, not the golden one. So I didn't think about that. So clearly this guy was just flying around with like golden wings of like the Golden Order or whatever. So maybe they've converted, but they just still look the same.
Giants, dragons, the Stormlord, and more to usher in their age, the age of the Erd Tree.
In Marika's own words, "Hark, brave warriors. Hark, my Lord Godfrey. We commend your deeds. Guidance hath delivered ye through each ordeal to the place ye stand. Put the giants to the sword and confine the flame atop the mount.
The
Let a
giants are the
new
ones.
epoch begin, an epoch glistening with life.
The giants are the.
Brandish the Elden Ring."
I don't want to talk over her necessarily. I just keep thinking she's done. The giants are the ones that make me the saddest. I feel like you just got these kick-ass old giant dudes just like hanging up north, chilling, probably drinking like. How much mead do you think one giant could drink in in one night? Like it's probably like thousands of gallons. Like they're really just like out there having a good time. And here all of a sudden here come these assholes. Time to go kill you, just like they do everybody. Are we going to talk about Radagon soon though? Because that's like the craziest shit that I really need to wrap my mind around.
For the age of the Erd Tree.
The Erd Tree would go on to be largely seen as a blessing for all of those in the lands between, especially those close to it in Leyndell, the capital city of the Erd Tree. The tree bestowed blessings. For example, the dew that dropped from its branches were like jewels. It loomed overhead as a constant reminder of order, and its roots reached far and wide, relieving many of the burden of death. In fact, Erd Tree burial was one of the highest honors a hero could receive. One by one, the previous factions of the world fell. The giants were put to the sword, and their fell god was killed by Marika herself. The ancient dragons broke down the walls of Leyndell, but met fierce retaliation. However, I think the House of the Erd Tree encountered the most trouble against the land to their southwest,
Here we go.
Leonia.
Yep.
Here, the House of the Moon repelled their offensives time and time again.
Yeah.
And I mean that literally, because there was not just one, but two wars fought here. And in both of these, there was no victory for the Golden, nor
That's
for
right.
the Moon. And I suspect it was probably because of these lobsters. These damn things can snipe you from like a mile away, and it's bullshit. Actually, it was probably because of the Carrier Knights, who, according to their
No, it was
weapons,
the
were able to
lobsters,
wield
bro.
sorcerous battle skills, and despite numbering fewer than 20, this power made them a match for even the champions of gold in battle.
Aryan
These
Knights.
enchanted knights were anointed by the Lunar Queen,
Yeah.
a young astrologer who went on to establish the House of Caria as royalty in this land. With her bewitching lunar magic, she won over the Academy of Raya Lucaria, where glintstone sorcery was studied, and united the Carian royal family
think-
and the learned scholars of Raya Lucaria defended their home.
I think glintstone sorcery is really interesting. I don't know if they're going to touch on it in this video because it's even 30 minutes is way too short to really grasp everything. But the people that use different sorceries, glintstone and stuff, they end up like their brains all turn into stone, and then they're just like a rock, like they're a jewel eventually. I'm forgetting the names of them too. As I mentioned, it's been a while since I played. That's really a fascinating thing. I could sit and watch a whole video just on glintstone sorcery and Raya Lucaria.
Royal family and the learned scholars of Raya Lucaria defended their home from the golden aggressors. At the head
They
of
whooped
this
their
great
asses.
golden army was Radagon.
Lord
Pope?
Radagon was a great champion.
He's a tortoise, by the
Possessed
way.
of
Y'all call him
flowing
Turtle
red
Pope.
locks.
The game calls him
He
Turtle
came
Pope.
to
It's
these
clearly a
lands at the head
tortoise.
of a great golden host. When he met Lady Renala in battle,
These two champions clashed, fell in love, and joined their houses.
Radagon once cleansed himself with celestial dew, repented his territorial aggressions, and swore his love to Renala. The Order of the Erdtree and the fate of the moon were conjoined, and all the wounds of war forgiven.
You might think it strange that the Greater Will would permit this union, but it's not too odd, all
I know
things
what happened.
considered. As with most From Software games, sorcery and faith are just two sides of the same coin, and both of these powers stem from the cosmos. Radagon and Renala were known to have 3 children together. Lunar Princess Rani, who inherited her mother's propensity for lunar magic, Radan, who took after his father Radagon and would go on to master gravitational magic, and Rykard, who pioneered new hex sorceries and would go on to feed himself to a great serpent.
Good man.
It follows that at some point after this, Marika began to harbor doubts. Doubts about the Golden Order, that she had had a hand
Well, she had
in
kids.
creating.
In Marika's own words, I declare mine intent to search the depths of the Golden Order through understanding of the proper way. Our faith, our grace is increased. Those blissful early days of blind belief are long past. My comrades, why must ye falter?
And it's at this point that we should talk about Marika's motivations, her character.
Yeah.
This is surely going to be one of those huge points of debate in the coming years, but for now, my working theory is that she wanted to discover the truth behind order and the truth behind the greater will, and she believed that bonds had to be broken so that they could be better understood.
Okay. It's hard for me to disagree with this guy, so I won't. But I think the greater will, when you're gonna like take somebody and say, "Hey, you're a god now," like there's a reason you're chosen. It's not like they're just gonna come in via the Elden Beast and just be like, "I don't know, she looks cool," like it's gonna be something going on. My working theory is that she has like natural biological, maybe not biological, but like she is a person. I think the greater will thought they could just kind of control, but who we are as humans or Newmans maybe was stronger than they thought.
She believed that there was great meaning to be found in hardship.
Queen Marika has high hopes for us, that we continue to struggle unto eternity.
For Lord Godfrey, his
Struggling is good. If you see, that's my point. Struggling is a good thing. You have a child. You can give that child everything in the world and they won't know how to do anything and they'll suck at being a human being. You have to introduce struggle so that you can learn to be a better person. So her hoping for struggle, I don't think the point was that he wanted them to suffer. It was that she wanted them to learn, to be better.
struggle ended at the end of...
To eternity.
For Lord Godfrey, his struggle ended at the end of his campaigns. According to his armor, he led the war against the giants, faced the Storm Lord alone. And then there came a moment when his last worthy enemy fell.
Remember
and it was
this.
then, as the story is told, that the hue of Lord Godfrey's eyes faded. In truth, he was robbed of his grace. Then Marika sent him away.
My lord, and thy warriors, I divest each of thee of thy grace. With thine eyes dimmed, ye will be driven from the lands between. Ye will wage war in a land afar, where ye will live and die.
Becomes
This became
Horaloo
known
again.
as the Long March of the Tarnished, as Godfrey and his tarnished descendants walked away from the lands between. But Queen Marika absolutely had a plan here, that Lord Godfrey and his descendants would one day return stronger, having struggled outside of grace.
Then, after thy death, I will give back what I once claimed, return to the lands between, wage war, and brandish the Elden Ring, grow strong in the face of death.
So was she saying that she was chosen by the greater will to be a god, but then inside the whole time was just like, no, I'm going to play your little game, but in the end, we're coming back, like we're taking you down?
Warriors of my lord, Lord Godfrey.
Soon after, she found a new husband. Either that or a new husband was found for her.
When Godfrey, first Elden Lord, was hounded from the lands between, Radagon left Rennala to return to the Erdtree capital, becoming Queen Marika's second husband and king consort, taking the title of Second Elden Lord. The mystery endures to this day as to why Lord
that's where we
Radagon
find
would
out.
cast Lady Rennala aside, and moreover, why a mere champion would be chosen for the seat of Elden Lord.
Dude, this is like the best story in the game, though, right? They can't beat the Carrion Knights. Everybody's getting fucked up. So she's like, watch this. I'm a man now. Check out my muscles. Rolls down there and is like, hey, baby, we don't got to fight anymore. It's like, who wrote this? Like, I mean, it's unbelievable. So she's like, oh, okay. Oh, you're so beautiful. And then it's all a trick. He busts out, heads back up here, and it is Marika. It's just like the whole thing is, the story was crazy. And watching it play out in the game is like the craziest way to experience it. Just like learning the story is one thing, but actually like putting those clues together while you play is ridiculous. Like what we're looking at, this statue right now, when you did that and it said that, tell me you didn't just stop and just like look at the ceiling and be like, holy shit, right? It was a crazy, crazy thing to happen. It's a crazy storyline.
Why a mere champion would be chosen for the seat of Elden Lord.
Whatever the case, as a part of this union, Radagon's prior 3 children with Rennala became demigod stepchildren, granted grace thanks to their new family tree.
Wouldn't they
Rennala
just
was
be gods?
broken by this, and so was her country, Leonia. The Queen's set reads, when Rennala, head of both the Academy of Raya Lucaria and the Carrion royal family, lost her husband Radagon, her heart went along with him. And then those at the Academy realized that Rennala was no champion after all. In the wake of Radagon's betrayal and Rennala's poor judgment, Leonia struggled with civil war, with the Academy of Raya Lucaria on one side and the Carrion royals on the other. And it's here, during the age of the Erdtree, that Lunar Princess Rani, daughter of Rennala and Radagon, stole a fragment of the Rune of Death.
It
Y'all can
happened
call me a
during
simp,
the golden
but
age of the Erdtree,
she's
long
pretty cool.
before the shattering of the Elden Ring. Someone stole a fragment of the Rune of Death from Malekith, the Black Blade.
As mentioned previously, Malekith was Marika's shadow, and he had sealed destined death in a black blade. Then a fragment, only a fragment, of this Rune of Death was stolen. And once this happened, Malekith went a step further in protecting destined death. He bound the blade within his own flesh, such that none might rob death ever again. It was too late, however. This fragment of the Rune of Death was used immediately, that night, to kill a demigod, Marika's own son, Godwyn the Golden.
That was the first recorded death of a demigod in all history.
Oh shit, man! I just put that together. So that was because she had multiple kids from 2 different fathers, even though one of the fathers was herself. I gotta look this up. Hold on. Okay, so I pulled up a family tree. So the thing is, Radagon and Rennala, who is actually Marika and Rennala, had Radon, Rani, Rykard. Okay. My point being, Rani, who is a child of Renala and Radagon, comes back and kills who was that was just dead there? A child of Marika. So you have like multi-family, like step family rivalries going on right there, which is like it's very it's very reality TV. I love it. All right, let's keep this going.
And it became the catalyst. Soon, the Elden Ring was smashed, and thus sprang forth the war known as the Shattering.
Now, there is a lot of really credible evidence that Marika was behind this plot to have a fragment of the Rune of Death stolen. There's also a ton of evidence that Marika is behind the entirety of your tarnished quest, but we'll talk about that in another video. For now, all you really need to know in terms of the timeline.
That's what I'm saying. Marika was chosen to be a god.
After the marriage
but
of
she didn't
Marika
want it.
and Radagon, and after a fragment of the Rune of Death was stolen, Marika went on to shatter the Elden Ring, and Radagon attempted to repair it, to no avail. The Elden Ring had been broken into runes, some great and some small.
You know, it's said that Lord Radagon harbored a secret. A famed sculptor of the Erdtree capital was once summoned to render Lord Radagon's likeness in giant stature, when he glimpsed the skeleton in Radagon's closet. And as such, it's said the great statue harbors his secret too.
Of course, the huge twist in Elden Ring is that Radagon is Marika, or depending on what you believe, he became her, for she knew it was going to happen.
In Marika's own words, "O Radagon,
No, I don't like that. He became her? That puts a whole twist on it. I much prefer the theory that he always was her, and she, with her new godly powers, created him to fulfill different roles that she had. Now, whether she had ulterior motives against the higher power or whatever is, maybe that's debatable. But I don't like the theory that he's actually a different person and then became her. I don't like that.
In Marika's own words, "O Radagon, leal hound of the Golden Order, thou art yet to become me. Thou art yet to become a god. Let us be shattered, both. Mine other self."
You can tell when From Software is keeping something a little bit open-ended, and of everything in Elden Ring's lore, this will...
That dialogue kind of went against what I just said, though.
Also go on to be one of the biggest unknowns as we move forward. For example, the wording, "thou art yet to become me," reinforces that Marika and Radagon were two separate entities before the Shattering. However, in contrast, there is also evidence that Radagon was always part of Marika. For example, Enya says that
the demigods are each and all the direct offspring of Queen Marika.
But how can this be if Radagon married Renala and had those demigod children? The only way that makes sense is if Radagon was always Marika and he just went over there to seduce Renala long ago.
That's my story. That's what I'm saying.
More concrete theories in the future, but on this matter, the most important thing is, what do you think? While you can figure out a ton of Elden Ring's story, not all of it is open to interpretation. Certain things are, and this is one of them. And your interpretation is a big part of what makes this story special.
My interpretation is that
the union of Radagon and Marika seems to be a union
Renala
of two
was like, "What's up, big boy?"
laws of the Golden
and lost
Order.
the war.
We mentioned these laws earlier, actually. There's the law of causality, and Marika is an agent of cause and effect. And there's the law of regression, as Radagon is a character who aspires to be complete and regress together. So I have a theory that forcing these two beings that represent these concepts together would have corrected Marika's deviance.
Real talk though, Radagon is probably one of the best designed like game bosses I've ever seen. When you're just like playing the game, he's tiny, right? He's just like human sized, and it's really kind of hard to see the details. I mean, you can tell that the Elden Ring like logo, right, like is inside, and it's pretty cool. But like looking at all this now, it's pretty wild looking. Like Radagon looks fucking cool.
represent these concepts together would have corrected Marika's deviance. But even so, she was imprisoned in the Erd Tree for the crime of the Shattering.
Marika's trespass demanded a heavy sentence. But even in shackles, she remains a god and the Vision's vessel.
The conjoined Radagon and Marika even had 2 demigod children of their own, Mikola and Millennia. These 2 children were born afflicted. Mikola was cursed with eternal childhood,
Inbred.
and Millennia harbored a horrific rot within. Even so, these 2 children were both chosen as Empyreans. They were immensely sacred beings and eligible to inherit godhood from the Greater Will. Perhaps the Greater Will was just desperate to find a worthy successor.
Look at him
And
go.
indeed, in the Shattering War to come, many would try to claim the shards of the Elden Ring, and they would try to take the throne, including, of course, the Tarnished, who returned from their long march at long last, which we'll talk about
back,
in the next
baby.
main lore video.
Man, that's a really a final point at the end. I am currently playing, you check it out on the channel, Demon Souls, which was the only FromSoft Soulsborne game, at least, that I have not played. So I'm playing that now, and I get so excited when I pick up some cool, dragon sword +1, whatever, and I pick it up and I go read the description, and it's just like, this is a short sword, good for poking people, and that's it. It's really, really interesting to see where FromSoft went from. I think 2015 is when Demon Souls came out. Don't quote me on that. That feels right. Whenever it came out, the time from Demon Souls to Elden Ring is like the difference in the games and the story and the lore and the depth is there. It's light years apart. Elden Ring is really something special. But if you play the games chronologically as they came out, though, it's just, I'm not going to say better and better and better because they change, but from a lore standpoint, from a story with depth, it's consistently better, 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 better every time. And that's what I really love about From Software, the Soulsborne games. So, all right, guys. Well, thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it. That was a lot of fun. I will see you next time. Gonna continue some playthroughs because I like to play the games. We'll see what else is out there. I'll probably try to do a reaction video of every game that I play, I guess on or off the channel. So, all right. See you next time. Bye.